from Adam Rowe of Subric. So Adam, if you're there, over to you.
Thank you. Also, apologies if my face is extremely large on your screen. I don't know why it's coming through so big. It must be a bit scary for you. But can I just back a slide? So my presentation today jointly delivered with Roy Tapping, my colleague from Cofnod in North Wales, and said I'm the manager of South East Wales Biodiversity Record Centre, and together we represent Local Environmental Record Centres Wales. So what is Local Environmental Record Centres Wales? It's a regional consortium of the 4 Welsh local environmental record centres. Wales is very lucky to have full coverage for record centres, and also that they were set up in relatively recent years. In the period 2000 to 2007, we went from having no local record centres to full coverage. And as soon as the network was complete, we set about working collaboratively and working closely together to deliver look services and data services across Wales. And then in 2015, we took the step of establishing a formal 5th organisation, a limited company, Local Environmental Record Centres Wales Limited. And the advantage of that is that it provides us with a single entity for simpler agreements with national partners. So we now have agreements in place with Natural Resources Wales, with the Welsh Government, with Welsh Water, Network Rail, and the 2 regional trunk road agents, and always looking for new national partners. The power behind what we're doing is the combined data set. So we have been able to merge our 4 individual look data sets into a combined 14.2 million records is where it currently stands, and then also a new innovative online data access system via our website Aderin, which enables partners and users to be able to access data directly online. There's a little Aderin animation, coming back to that in a second. I mentioned before that we're the only country in the UK with full coverage of local environmental record centres. Northern Ireland has a single publicly funded centre, but as a result we are viewed enviously by other regions of the UK, and rightly so, partly because of the success that we've achieved, but also because of our close working with these key national partners such as NRW and Welsh Government. And currently in Scotland there was a Scottish Biodiversity Information Forum review of the infrastructure for biodiversity data in Scotland, and despite initial massive plans for a huge overhaul of the system, they're now looking at a much more modest model, which is very closely based on the Welsh model of the local record centres working together technologically and merging data sets. So in normal circumstances I would be brave enough to do a live demonstration, but I'm not mad enough to do that on a virtual national conference. So I'm going to show you a couple of slides, screenshots from Aderin. This is the public facing homepage of Aderin, and there are 2 parts of the site which anybody can use. Distribution maps, I'm not going to show you now, but that's does what it says on the tin and provides a national distribution map of the records of a particular species of your choosing across Wales. And then what's in my area. Now what's in my area, if you click on that green button, you can then move around a map, navigate around a map and click on a point. So this example is where I'm sitting there in St Bride's Major. You can also enter a 4-digit grid reference if you'd prefer, and click go. But please note here that maps and data are not used for any commercial purposes. These aren't to take the place of a paid for data search if you are a commercial consultant or developer. Once you click go, you get this list up of records. Numbers are very small, but I can see 443 records from 165 different non-sensitive species in that area. I say non-sensitive because the sensitive species have been removed from these search results following guidance from Natural Resources Wales, and it also obviously makes the dataset less, shall we say, pinchable from a commercial viewpoint. You can see the list of records here on the live version. You can scroll through and you can type part of a species name into the search box and see what is in that area. It's a really good way of seeing whether it's where you live or whether it's where you're doing a project. Find out what's being recorded, and particularly look at the number of records and the last recorded date, as it's a real good tool for spurring people on to enter more records, to get more up-to-date records onto our system. If you're a partner and you've got a service level agreement with one of the individual LERCs or with Look Wales, then you can have a login to do your own data searches. So here I've thrown a 1 kilometre circular buffer around where I'm located, and here we've now got 3,968 records. These are of all species, not just the high priority categories. You'll see the records spilling out over the edge of the search buffer. These are records of priority mobile species. So now we're viewing full records, full confidential records, and also the records of 1 kilometre square resolution which clip into the search area. You can also see sites, designated sites and habitats information via the Adairan tool. And so this is just a quick screenshot of the designated sites in that particular search area for sites of importance for nature conservation where they're available. And we're developing systems now where we can hyperlink back to read the full details of those sites. One more click and you can go through to eMapper, which is the part of the Adairan system which was developed by Cofnod in North Wales. And in this, it's fully interactive. You can click on an individual species dot and view the record, and it pulls up the individual species records, the full species records. By default, the records are shown by taxonomic group, but you can display by category if you like, and you can view the designated sites and habitats information through this as well. You can also filter the data by date and various other parameters, and then produce downloadable reports as well as public-friendly, non-confidential reports if you need to share them further. Commercial customers across Wales, or at least in 3 out of the 4 local environmental record centres, are dealt with via Adairan as well, and this is just another example of a commercial data search product which ecological consultants etc. would now be used to dealing with receiving from LERCs in Wales. The main purpose of the talk today, as well as to look at what we are delivering currently in the LERCs, is to look at the new direction. So these are the things we're still due to talk about, so I'm not going to dwell on this slide, but I'm going to move on to looking at how COVID-19 and the challenges of 2020 have led us down a different route than normal. So main example of this is the Wales Garden BioBlitz. This was the headline event for Wales Nature Week in 2020. And it was an event that was organised, that we came up with the idea in Look Wales, and the work was funded via the Local Nature Partnerships Cymru project. But the aim was to get everybody out recording the spaces that they were allowed to visit during lockdown restrictions in their own gardens and immediate surroundings. It all took place on the 30th of May, which was just a wonderful early summer, late spring day, and we had some fantastic results from the day. So 250 plus individual recorders got involved, and they recorded between them just over 7,000 individual records of 1,568 species. Looking at the distribution of these species taxonomically, not surprisingly plants, birds and moths dominate the spikes, but it's really interesting to see the breadth of the number of taxonomic groups which were reported, and these across here, that the first few columns, they're really good numbers of records. The whole event was promoted on social media as well. Sorry, just quickly to say, within those 7,000 records were some really significant records, interesting records. This little oval creature in the middle is a woolly vine scale insect, and my colleague at SUBREC, Dave Slade, recorded the second only Welsh record of that species during that day. The geographic spread was really pleasing to see, records from pretty much across the whole of Wales, and some real hot spots there in Pembrokeshire, up in Montgomeryshire and across South East Wales. I mentioned social media. We promoted heavily using this hashtag Wales Garden BioBlitz, and we were really delighted to see 346 original tweets from 87 different accounts, and then the retweet numbers were even higher. And all in all, we're able to say that it was the most prolific day of wildlife recording in Wales ever, which is just such a nice thing to be able to say, and I hope we can do it again one day. Also, another aspect of our work to support recording and recorders during the COVID-19 times was this little resource that my SUBREC team has developed, an online resource of online wildlife activities and resources. So we've put together a web page with links to over 128 different activities and resources, and this has received some pretty wide attention around the UK during the last 8 months or so. This includes YouTube playlists. So there's the actual website. I'll try and paste the link later. But yeah, the YouTube playlist has been quite a fun thing to do. So collating 29 invertebrate training course videos, which we've come across during this period from across the UK. A couple of them are from Welsh Lurks, but each taxonomic group has a separate playlist, and it's just a great resource. Final idea on connecting people to wildlife was during 2020, CBREC has launched its own grants for wildlife recording, and since September we've been able to fund the purchase of recording equipment and resources to enable people to get more valuable records, to get more involved in their recordings. Scheme has been shamelessly borrowed from COVNOD, who've been running the same scheme for I think they're in their 3rd year. But it's a great way of feeding back to the recording community. Local Nature Partnerships Cymru project is a really significant project at the moment. We're in year 2 of a 3-year project, and Look Wales is a major project partner. And during this project, we're connecting with the LMP coordinators and providing them with data and services to their LMPs in a way that we haven't previously been able to do. We've also been providing training and recording courses and species identification courses for the LMP partners. And most interestingly, undertaking some new innovative work to use our data to make evidence-driven regional projects, which are aiming to support the LMPs in delivering their new local nature recovery action plans. I'm speaking on this subject tomorrow at 12:30, so tune in then for more details. Final new direction slide from me before I hand to Roy is on ecosystem resilience mapping. This is just to flag up a piece of work that the Lurks are beginning to specialise in. This is developing local scale high resolution ecosystem resilience mapping. It's based loosely on some of the national work that's been done through the Curve project. The screenshot in front of you is the new local nature partnership nature recovery tool for the Brecon Beacons LNP, which has been developed jointly by CBREC and WWBIC in West Wales. And through this, we're loading up creating a portal which the local nature partnership partners can access all sorts of contextual data, existing data that's out there. But the innovation comes from mapping the attributes of ecosystem resilience, diversity, extent, connectivity and condition at the local level, fine resolution data to feed into inform local decisions. So yeah, feel free to ask questions on that later. I'm now going to throw to Roy. That's my slide. Are you there, Roy?
Thanks, Adam. Hopefully you can all hear me.
I can.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I think
we've got
you will.
Okay, good. Okay, so thank you, Adam, for that. Basically, I just want to follow on with a few examples of other things that we're doing, and I think one of the things that we're often asked about is sort of what is the composition of our data sets, and we're very much in the sort of receiving end of data. Often we're the ones that, you know, people are passing us data that's already been collated. Data we have really established routes of data flow as well to us. But I think one of the things we're really moving towards is a much more targeted effect to the way that we're looking at data. And a really good example of that is some work that we've been doing up in COVNOD for the last few years, looking at data from ecological consultants. This sort of data is quite important. I mean, it's some of the freshest data. It's often on sites that you don't get access to. It's often related to planning applications as well. So some of that information is really key to have preloaded often before decisions are made. SIEM actually issues some guidance, and you know, this still holds very true about the need for those carrying out ecological surveys on sites should be passing their data to local record centres. But one of the things that we found was quite interesting, and I'm just looking back at this. Sorry, I've lost my... Okay, I seem to have lost that animation there. But basically, we found that back in 2015, we were struggling to access data. We had something like around about just under 1%, 0.1% of our database. About 3,000 records were coming in from consultants. So we thought we had to do something about this. So targeting our effort towards that was quite important. Now, we often get data in a variety of ways in order to access it. So we do actually get data sent to us by consultants in database readable format, so in tabular format, but we also actually were getting data in report format as well. And that takes time to actually go through, pick out the biological records and put those into a database. But we thought we would tackle both ends of this, so both the electronic data that was coming in tabular format, but also crucially say to consultants, look, just allow us access to the data in your original format that you would be sending to your planning authorities as part of a planning application, and we'll try and mobilise that data for you. Now, one of the other key things that we wanted to do with this was actually try and get permissions. There's been some reasons for not sharing for some time, and I think part of this has been around sensitivities over data, and people are concerned about this sort of information being in the public, before it's in the public domain, being available to people to use. So we were clearly wanted to ensure that we were getting these permissions up front. So we were asking whether we could use the records, whether we could actually use the reports as well and pass those on to people requesting information from us in the future, and also whether we could pass that information on to the NBN, the National Biodiversity Network Atlas for Wales. So what's happened? So we were from a situation that in 2015 we had about 3,000 records. Fortunately, I've lost my, it says a 0-fold increase, it's a 10-fold increase. So just looking at the most recent figures, we've got a massive increase of numbers, over 30,000 records that we've put in during that time. It's been painstaking work, I have to say, but I think it's been really worth it. So one of the things that I wanted to just say about things that we're starting to do now more of, and I really put this down to a couple of members of the team at Covnod, Aisling and Catherine. They've both been working using Power BI. It was actually a business analytics tool, and it's mainly used in things like finance, but we decided we would actually start to use it in our own data, from data from our own database. And it's sort of a really powerful Excel. It maps things, it allows you to create simple graphs very quickly, it allows you to drill down to the data as well. So when we looked at this sort of data that we've been getting in from consultants through Power BI, we were able to just tell a few stories just very, very simply. So firstly, we could see the general spread of data, so out of the 34,000 records, we can see, where is the spread in terms of the taxonomic proportions that we have. And you can see that we have quite a large proportion of plants, but also animals, etc. And then if we map that against the main categories that we report against, so the first 3 categories here are protected and priority species. You can see that category 4, we have a huge number of those that are even coming out of these reports that are coming from consultants. And this is quite surprising to us because, we were thinking that much of this data was protected and priority species data, particularly linked to sort of planning application elements. And the main reason for this was to do with plants, really. There's quite a lot of phase 2, in particular, phase 1 and phase 2 botanical surveys information, and so therefore a lot of the plants that were coming out are still in these lower categories. But when we look at mammals, we can see that actually, you know, the vast majority of mammals are actually category 1. So, you know, high priority, important data for us to be able to share in the future. And then if we drill down further, and we actually look at the sort of individual species or groups of species, we'll see that bats come out very high. So it wasn't really a revelation to us that we were actually getting, you know, that sort of level of data. But, you know, it's quite important to show that bats are, you know, they make up a large proportion of the data that's coming out of these reports. So I just want to focus in on a couple of things just before I end. One is systems, and the other is, you know, just looking at what sort of things we might be using in the future. So Adam's already mentioned Darin, and we've also got another system in Covnod which we use called Orca. Both of these two systems are what you would call cloud-based. So they're cloud storage. And this is so important for us. I think as we're expanding the network and we're working across that network, having the ability to have the data stored somewhere in the cloud is really important. In terms of that, animations, we've got, sorry about this. Well, basically what I was going to say with that is that we've got a Darin working for Wales, and then and an Orca working not just in Wales but actually in parts of England. And Adam mentioned that we are having in our initial discussions with how Scotland are working. With both of these systems could be really important for Scotland. So they're not looking at just borrowing some of the model that we've been working out of, but also looking at the systems that we have. In terms of other systems, well, all of us have all got online recording systems. Hopefully many of you are registered to be able to add your data there. Please do, if you've not already registered, please do that. We've also got the Lurk Wales app, which is a really easy to use recording in the field tool that goes on smartphones, both Android and Apple. That data comes to us very rapidly as well. So I just wanted to look forward to some of the sort of different sorts of data that we're likely to get. And I think these are going to create some really big challenges for us because the volumes and the types of data that we're going to get are going to be very, very different. So most of the examples I've got here, whether it's from drones, whether it be data loggers, field cameras, all of those sort of things, basically they're high volumes of pictures data, and we can't really deal with that very easily to get it into a database. So we've got to find methods in which we can deal with this because people are using these increasingly, and we're finding that people are sending us data and it's quite difficult to deal with. So currently we're having to sort of transpose that into a database record. And then I think in the future as well, we're going to have various tools as well that are going to really help us. So there's already some fantastic ID material on the internet, and some of the ones that are on smartphones, like even Google Lens is a fantastic way of just taking a picture and it gives you some sort of ID of a particular species if you can get the right sort of picture. So, you know, great stuff for that sort of thing. So I just come back in summary, the final few things really. I think in Wales sometimes we think that, you know, Lurks are doing a good job, but how does that compare to the rest of the UK? Well, I would say that, and we have this said to us many times, that we are a UK leading network of Lurks. We have some fantastic systems which, you know, other Lurks want to use in both England and Scotland. And we're really great at being able to combine this idea of having local data and national data and supplying it at different sort of levels. So just to finish, I'd just like to say, thank you to all of those people that have helped Lurks go into this journey and go forward in the next 10 years. All the Lurk Wales staff, all the recorders that supply us with data, and crucially all the funders that keep us going over this period. Thank you very much.